top of the morning, and it is a beaut.
And the hope of the Irish as the future champion of the world.
A podcast is kind of like it's like a radio show that's not on the radio.
Welcome to the Barry J. McDonald Podcast. The place where dreams get dusted off and acted on. Because life is too short. We're living on a rock that's flying through space, and hey, what the hell else were you going to do with yourself here?
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to today's podcast episode. Now, today I want to talk about creation and automation. Now, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember the name of it exactly. I've been listening to a lot of content recently, but what attracted me to this episode was there was a billionaire on it. Now, the gentleman who was being interviewed was the gentleman behind Booking.com. Now, I said, well, Barry, if there's a billionaire on this podcast, it may make sense maybe to take some notes or pay attention to what he's talking about. Now, I don't know if I will ever reach billionaire status, but if it'll get the needle moving in the right direction, well then, it's well worth listening to what he has to say. Now, what this gentleman said was that his advice for anyone who has a business, an online business or whatever they're doing, is he recommends that you stay with one thing at a time. Now, what he means by that is to stick with one thing until you get really good with it before you start expanding out into different things. Now, what he was talking about was he remembers meeting Jeff Bezos many, many years back when Jeff was just only selling books. And what Jeff wanted to be was he wanted to be the greatest bookstore in the world. Now, Jeff has long since passed that, and he has all the different departments on the Amazon store now, all the electrical goods and all the kind of digital downloads, movies, music, all those different things. But basically what he wanted to do was he wanted to be the best bookstore in the world, and then everything else came on top of that. Now, the reason this gentleman was talking about it was because he said that he sees a lot of people who never really have much success with their businesses is because they're trying to build maybe 3 or 4 different businesses at the same time. And as he said, when if you've got 4 businesses, if you divide that evenly 4 ways, well, that is only going to be 25% of your time is going to be spent on working on each business. And he said it's better to shut down 3 of those and focus 100% on one business and start from there. Now, he just brought up the subject of that, and he was talking about how Richard Branson, he of Virgin fame, who, when you look at Richard Branson has a lot of different businesses. He started off in music, and, he ventured out and he was doing coke at one stage, and he was doing TV, and he was doing telephones, and he's all different kind of divisions of the Virgin business. But what he said about Richard Branson was that Richard Branson only stays with one kind of division for a while. So, for example, if he was going to maybe start doing telephones or whatever, he would throw himself into the kind of the telephone part of Virgin, and he would get it up to be as successful as he could. And then what he would do is he would hire people below him who could step into his place. So he could step aside, and then he could move into another venture, and then he could start another part of the Virgin things, maybe wines or whatever takes his fancy. But what he was doing was he was building the business up but he was also putting people in place behind him, so there would be a point where he could step out and then that business could run on its own. And it got me thinking of how many of us who have online and offline businesses who never really think like that. When we're trying to build a business, we try and do everything ourselves, or we take on more work. Or, for example, if maybe we want to earn more money, well, we'll say, well, I have this income coming in from this job. If I want to make more money, well, that means I need to get another job, or I need to do another thing, or I've got to do something else. So what we're doing is we're adding more and more and more tasks on ourselves. Instead of thinking in reverse, how can I take more of these tasks off me and still be as productive as ever? So that's something I'm considering at the moment, is trying to get in as much automation as I can, because, if you've listened to the podcast over this past couple of episodes, I have been talking about this kind of multi-potential kind of trend that I see in myself. And what I find is that when it comes to my business, in different things, be it blogging, podcasting, fiction writing or whatever, there does reach a point where I just lose interest in it. I throw myself 100% into it. I try and be the best that I can, and then there's kind of this point where I just lose interest in it and I drop it. And what I've been thinking is, if you are like that, is to maybe build a business up when your interest is high in it, but as you're doing that, and as you find that maybe you're losing interest in it or it just doesn't excite you anymore, is to put people into place behind you that when you can step away from that thing is kind of running hands off. So it's almost like another kind of income stream that you are building. So for example, maybe you could go over to maybe Fiverr.com and hire people who could do some of that work for you. You could maybe go to Upwork.com, or maybe you could just hire someone that who is interested in it and who may be more talented than you are, and even give them 50% of the profits or whatever, but kind of work out some arrangement where they would take over the work, but that you could get an income on it. And you could do this over and over and over again. You could have multiple streams of income. And again, you're taking work off yourself instead of stupidly what the majority of people do in life is they work more hours for more money, but everything is sitting on their back. And as you're probably well aware, the camel is going to break at some point. You're going to put too much straw on its back and it can't take any more. And it's going to break down. It's going to have a mental breakdown. It's going to have a physical breakdown. But that whole thing is going to fall apart and all that income is going to be lost because of that. So if you are in your business right now, and if you find that maybe you are stupidly, like I used to do in the past, taking on more tasks, making more work for yourself, would be maybe to see, something, can I create something and can I automate it? Now, sometimes you can automate it with software that you can take some of the workload off you. For example, even this podcast episode here, as soon as I finish it here, it is usually sent straight over to Headliner. And what they do is they create a video version of this podcast, which is sent on to If This Then This, which is ifttt.com, if you want to do a search for that. And what happens is it's sent over to YouTube, and then that's sent from YouTube to Twitter, that's sent over to Facebook. So basically, when I record this podcast episode and I upload it, everything is handled automatically, and this podcast episode goes into a couple different platforms, all without me doing anything at all. So if you could maybe, outsource some of your work, try doing it with software, try using platforms like If This Then This, or there's another one I've seen recently which is called repurpose.io. If you have maybe any video content or if you have any audio content, that seems like a good one to use to repurpose the content. So basically trying to repurpose, try to take more work off yourself so that you can, if you are like me, if you do get excited about fiction writing, it means that, your blog would be automatically set up. Someone else will be taking care of it. So at least you're making money from that. And then you can get into fiction writing and then you can work on that. And if you find maybe your interest goes on that, well, then you could hire some ghostwriters or something like that to pick up the slack on that writing. And then you could move on to another thing. So it kind of got me thinking, that more of us should be more like these billionaires who build up these businesses, but who are always thinking, who can I hire that'll slot in below me so that I can just step away and it leaves me freedom to do something else, or just freedom to just enjoy the income, instead of taking more and more work onto ourselves, where it's eventually going to reach a breaking point, and it's eventually probably going to reach a point where we won't get to enjoy that money because we're just going to be working, too busy to do anything with it. So give that some thought today. Is there any way that you can create and also automate? Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Before you go, Barry wants to show you how you can use the power of stories to sell more of your products and services. He says that if you head on over to the Writecom.com website now, he'll show everything you need to do. Have a great day, and thanks for dropping by.